It's good if you like it. I almost died when I was an infant. Some other babies had gotten a mystery illness along with me, and we all received a grim prognosis. While I was in the hospital, my grandpa Richter suffered an embolism, and his chances of survival too were bleak. My mother visited Grandpa after staying with me in the hospital. Is Greg doing any better? Grandpa asked. No, my mother replied. My grandfather then looked disturbed. Well, he said, he's supposed to be. A few days later, Grandpa died and I got well. My mom believes he offered himself in my place. I don't know that God accepts such offers, but I do know this. Greater love has no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friends. Grandpa certainly was willing. As my Grandpa Richter was being buried, my Granny Smith sat with me at the hospital. My Granny and Papa Smith were good Baptists who were inside the church every time the doors were open. But their faith was not limited to the church pew. You could see their convictions in their everyday lives. And while I would have loved to have known my Grandpa Richter, I'm certainly happy I didn't miss my Papa Smith. Papa was full of sage advice. For instance, if you were leaning back in a chair and asked Papa, will it hurt the chair if I lean back like this? He'd reply, it probably won't help it. I can't argue with that. When I was 9 years old, I stayed with Granny and Papa for a week so I could attend vacation Bible school at their church. As we sat down to eat one night, I noticed something on the table that I'd never eaten before. What's that? I asked. I was told what it was. Does it taste good? I queried. It's good if you like it, Papa said, joking, though I was too young at the time to catch the humor. But I wasn't sure whether I liked it, so I did without. To this day, I don't remember what it was. For all I know, it might have become my favorite food if only I had given it a taste. At the end of the week of Bible school, we all came out of our individual classrooms and into the church sanctuary. The director gave us some parting words and handed out certificates of attendance. Then she told us why the vacation Bible school had been held, explaining that Jesus had died for our sins and that if we accepted his sacrifice on the cross, we could be saved. We would go to heaven when we died. I sure wanted that, but I was embarrassed to go up in front of the church like she wanted. Eternal life was the best thing I'd ever been offered, but, like with Granny and Papa's mystery food, I was too chicken to try it. I confided later to Granny about how I had wanted to go up in front of the assembly, but had been too afraid. I know I was on her prayer list after that. And it was a good thing. A few years later, I was a teenager, and I faced all the problems teenagers face, and I got into much of the trouble teenagers get into. Often, I would think about how I had almost died when I was a baby. If I had died, I thought at the time, I wouldn't be facing all those problems. Later, of course, I found out my problems weren't any worse than any other teenagers, but at the time, non-existence seemed better than existence. Thankfully, I was too afraid to end my life because I worried I would go to hell if I did. But who was I? I was nobody, I told myself. Why had God even created me? If I had never existed, it wouldn't have made any great hole in human history, I thought. These thoughts stayed with me until college. One night, I dreamed I was driving home from class when my Grandma Richter, who had passed away about 5 years earlier, appeared in the seat beside me. You're going to die on this road, Grandma warned, then disappeared. Being superstitious at the time, I took the dream to mean I was going to have a car wreck on that stretch of road. So for the next few months, I drove with extra caution when I reached that spot on the highway. A few months after that, I finally decided to make that commitment I had been afraid of at Granny and Papa's church 10 years earlier. And it was after that that I came to believe that the dream with my Grandma Richter might have been God speaking to me, that it was the road in life I was on that would lead to death if I didn't change lanes. I still think about my early brush with death sometimes, but now I'm glad I made it through. Granny and Papa have gone on to be with the Lord, and I'm glad for them, but I'm even happier that they hung around long enough to be an influence on their prodigal grandson. And whenever I wonder what the afterlife will be like, I think of Papa's words of wisdom. It's good if you like it. Hey, this is Greg. The segment you just heard, It's Good If You Like It, was written in 1994 when I was 29 years old. And it's going to be part of a new ebook I have coming out in a few weeks. But just going over that piece from 25 years ago almost, just has taught me lessons about how I have just grown, how you grow spiritually over time, because just that whole thing came from a place that I used to struggle with the meaning in my life, and I clung to the fact that I had been spared, that God had spared me, and as a baby, and that gave me comfort in knowing that, and looking back, that's something that I don't even feel anymore. It's very weird. I had to reword a little bit of this during the editing process, because there were things in there that was like it didn't ring true anymore. And even though it was true at the time, it didn't say what it should have said to readers, but it also just tried to reword it to make it sound better, just from a reader's standpoint. It just started to get so convoluted that it was just like, why am I trying to jump through all of these hoops, to make this sound good to readers, that it's saying something that I don't even feel anymore. Because since then I've become so much more over time confident in my purpose in life, and that God is there and showing me. I mean, I still, of course, have struggles with what do I need to do? I'm not a perfect person. I haven't achieved perfection. It's like, oh yes, I'm following, God says do this and I do it. God probably says do things and then I do the opposite still. But I don't have this nagging doubt about, is there a meaning in my life anymore that I did at the time. And I was reminded of my old spiritual mentor when I first became a Christian. Mr. Swan was one of my best friends, and he was, at the time, he was about the age I am now, in my early 50s. And so he had been a Christian since he was 39 years old only, but he, of course, had the natural maturity of a person, and then 10 years under his belt as a Christian, and I was like, I had nothing under mine. But he would assure me when I would just go and visit him and his wife weekly, and just carry my Bible and have questions and fears. He would assure me that everything was going to get better. And my favorite thing that he used to tell me was, you've just got to think like you're climbing a rope, and you get a certain level and you just tie off a knot there, and then you climb a little more, and you may slide down the rope, you may lose your grip and slide a little bit, but you can't slide farther down than the last knot you tied. So you just keep going a little higher, and then you tie another knot, and you get a little higher and you tie another knot, and you can never slide farther than the last knot. And so when I look at this column that I wrote in 1994, it was like, I say, man, that's like 30 or 40 knots ago, So to me, it's I still like what the message that it has, but I can see in it myself the things I was thinking. It's like looking at yourself. If you look at a picture of yourself from 25 years ago, and you think, man, look how much younger I looked back then. I wish I looked that way again. But this is kind of like looking at your spirit, yourself, in a photo. When you look at something you wrote and you can see how you thought back then, but you don't think as much, I wish I still looked like that. You're kind of glad of the years that wisdom has given you. And so the pictures, the picture you see of your old inside your head, maybe you're kind of glad you're not that person anymore on the inside. Maybe you'd take the body that you used to have, the face you used to have, but you sure are happy of what you are on the inside. So if you're out there listening to this and that's something you're still struggling with, just take the words of Mr. Swan to heart and just tie a knot. And just then climb a little more and tie another knot. And if when you slide down, you can't slide any farther than the last knot. And I've lived 25 more years now, and I'm as old as he was when he told that to me, and he's gone on to be with the Lord since then. But I can tell you that what he said was true, and I'll testify to that. So you can know that he told it to me, and now I'm telling it to you. And just believe it. And I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks for listening. You can keep up with my latest on Twitter or Medium.com. Look under my name, Greg Richter, or under my username, @Owen2. That's OWENTEW.